Jason, what is that?
What the hell? No, no, no! People think HOA stories start with warning letters. Mine started with panic. Because when I looked outside, I genuinely thought somebody had the wrong house. I was wrong. They were in my backyard. People think panic feels loud. It doesn't. For me, it felt weirdly quiet. Because after the screaming, after the running, after seeing people standing in my backyard doing something I never gave anyone permission to do, I remember standing there thinking one thing. How did I end up here? Because this wasn't supposed to be one of those HOA stories. Seriously, you've heard them. Trash cans, parking complaints, letters because somebody painted a mailbox the wrong color. Annoying? Sure. Life ruining? Not really. And if you'd asked me back then, I would have told you I wasn't worried. Not even little. Because when we moved into that neighborhood in Texas, it honestly felt like we'd won. Not mansion won. Not lottery won. Just regular person won. The kind where you pull into the driveway and sit in your car for a second and think, damn, we actually did it. Because we'd spent years doing what everybody does. Saving, waiting, compromising, telling ourselves, next year, maybe next year. And then, suddenly, there it was. Big backyard, quiet street, trees, a lot of trees. And that mattered to me, probably more than it should have. Because I loved that backyard. Not in some deep spiritual way. I just loved stepping outside and feeling like I wasn't packed inside a neighborhood where every house felt glued together. And Emily loved it too. Actually, Emily loved the neighborhood before we even toured the house. That should have been my first warning. Because she rolled down the car window and said, "Jason, look at this place." And I remember laughing, because she sounded like we just arrived at Disneyland. Kids riding bikes, perfect lawns, people waving, American flags, dogs, smiling neighbors. Everything looked aggressively normal, almost too normal. But when you're buying a house, you don't question normal. You pray for normal. Because by that point, we'd seen enough disasters. Houses with mystery smells, foundation problems, weird cellars. One place had a room so creepy, Emily literally refused to walk upstairs. No explanation, just nope, and she turned around. So compared to all that, this place felt perfect. Even the HOA didn't scare me. And maybe that's funny now, but at the time, I barely thought about it. Because the realtor said the exact thing every realtor says. Oh, they're pretty relaxed. Relaxed. Relaxed is a funny word, because people use it before absolutely terrible experiences. The surgery should be relaxed. The interview's relaxed. The HOA is relaxed. No one says, "Hey, Jason, these people are eventually going to start acting like suburban dictators." Nobody says that. So we signed, moved in, started unpacking, started building routines. And for a while, life was boring. Beautifully boring. Which is all I wanted. Then one weekend, I was outside grilling. Nothing dramatic, nothing weird, just burgers, music, Emily inside. And that's when I saw him. The HOA president. Or property manager. Honestly, I still don't know what title he preferred. Because people like that always have 14 titles. He walked over, smiling. Huge smile, neighborhood smile, handshake smile. The kind where your brain immediately goes, oh, nice guy. And at first, he was. Complimented the house, complimented the yard, complimented the trees. Then he looked past me, toward the backyard, and said, "Beautiful trees. Though, those might become a problem eventually." I remember laughing, actually laughing, because who says that? Become a problem? What does that even mean? And he kept smiling, like he just said something completely normal. Roots, drainage, maintenance issues. Then he shrugged. "We'll keep an eye on it." Will. Not you, not maybe. Will. And looking back, that was the moment. Not the chainsaw, not the backyard, not the panic. That. Because I ignored it. I smiled, laughed, and thought, weird guy. I had absolutely no idea what was coming. Because a few days later, the emails started arriving. For a while, I completely ignored it. Seriously. Because when you move into a suburban neighborhood, weird people don't immediately scare you. They just become part of the scenery. You know what I mean? The guy who cuts his grass like he's preparing for military inspection. The neighbor who somehow appears outside every single time you leave the house. The person who waves a little too much. Every neighborhood has one. So when I saw this guy standing near the edge of the yard, I didn't think problem. I thought weird. That's it, just weird. And honestly, I forgot about him. Went back to grilling, went back to being normal. Then my wife looked over at me and said, "Jason, why is he still standing there?" And I don't know why, but that question immediately made my stomach drop. Because suddenly my brain did that thing brains do when somebody points out something you should have noticed already. I looked up again, and this time, something felt different. Because she was right. He wasn't looking at me, wasn't looking at the grill, wasn't looking at the house. He was staring at the trees. Just staring. Not casual staring, not neighborhood curiosity staring. Inspection staring. The kind where somebody looks like they're solving a problem inside their head. And I remember thinking, okay, that's strange. Really strange. Because normal people don't stare at trees like that, especially not somebody else's trees. So I walked over. Not angry, not confrontational. Honestly, I was smiling. Because I still thought this was about to become one of those tiny suburban interactions you immediately forget. Like, "Hey, beautiful yard. Thanks. See you around." Done. End of story. Instead, I got this. "Beautiful trees." That was it. First thing out of his mouth. Not beautiful house, not nice neighborhood. Trees. Only trees. So I laughed. Actual nervous laugh, because who opens with that? Who stares at somebody's backyard for 5 minutes, then walks over and immediately starts talking about trees? I remember saying, thanks? And he smiled. Huge smile, friendly smile, neighborhood smile. The kind of smile that immediately makes you trust somebody. Then he pointed. Straight toward the backyard. Those might become a problem eventually. What? Problem? What does that even mean? I remember actually looking behind me, like maybe there was something else back there. Because in my head I thought, okay, roots, Branches? Animals? I had no idea. And he just kept smiling, completely calm. Roots, drainage, maintenance. Then a shrug. We'll keep an eye on it. Will. Will? Not you should. Not maybe check. Not have somebody inspect them. Will. And I swear, the second he said that, something in my brain quietly went, nope. Because suddenly this didn't feel like friendly neighbor talk anymore. I felt like somebody discussing plans that I didn't remember agreeing to. And then I noticed something. The clipboard. Big letters. HOA board. And suddenly, something stupid came back into my head. A letter. 3 weeks earlier. One of those HOA letters nobody reads. Because honestly, who reads HOA letters? You open them, roll your eyes, throw them somewhere, forget they exist. I thought I'd done exactly that. I was wrong. Because buried somewhere in that stupid letter was the beginning of everything. I tried acting normal. Seriously, I really did. I sat down, picked up my drink, looked at my wife, and for a few seconds, I genuinely convinced myself I was being ridiculous. Because come on, it was one weird HOA guy. That's it. One conversation, one clipboard, one strange comment about trees. Who cares, right? Then my wife looked at me and said, "Jason, why are you so quiet?" And honestly, I almost laughed. Because I immediately said the same thing every person says when they're absolutely not fine. I'm fine. Of course I was fine. People always say they're fine, even when they're not. Because the truth, I wasn't listening anymore. Not really. Because my brain kept replaying that conversation over and over and over again. Beautiful trees, roots, drainage, wheel, keep an eye on it. Wheel. That stupid word again, wheel. Because every time I replayed it, it sounded stranger. Not, you should keep an eye on it. Not, maybe have somebody inspect them. Wheel. Like somebody assigning themselves a job nobody gave them. Like somebody discussing plans I didn't remember approving. And suddenly I remembered something else. Something from the week before. One of those tiny details you barely process at the time. We were inside, and Emily had asked me a random question. She said, "Jason, do you know that guy near the fence? He's been standing there for a while." At the time, I barely looked. Actually, I don't even think I stood up. Because why would I? Quiet neighborhood. People outside. Completely normal, right? Wrong. Because suddenly I realized exactly who it was. The clipboard, smile, trees. Always the trees. Always. And suddenly, something felt very different. Because I wasn't asking, who is this guy? Now I was asking, how many times has he been here? Because those are very different questions. Very different. And then another memory hit me. Fast. A white truck. Parked near the street. Not facing houses. Facing backyards. Facing mine. Again, nothing I thought about at the time, but now? Now every stupid little thing suddenly felt connected. And I hated that feeling. Because I started realizing something. I wasn't remembering his first visit. I was remembering the first time I noticed him. And those are not the same thing. Not even close. Then my wife looked outside again. Stopped talking. Stopped moving. And quietly said,
Jason, there's that truck again. No. No, because suddenly I stopped breathing too. Because at that moment, I still thought I was dealing with one weird HOA guy. One. I had absolutely no idea. I was about to realize this thing was a lot bigger than that.
I wish I could tell you I reacted immediately. I didn't. Because for a few seconds, my brain genuinely refused to process what I was looking at. Orange paint. Bright orange paint across my tree. And listen, I know how stupid that sounds. Because if somebody told me, Jason, relax, it's paint, I would have agreed under normal circumstances. But nothing felt normal anymore. Nothing. Because the first thing I thought wasn't, who painted this? It was when. Because I'd been out there yesterday. I grilled outside, walked outside, sat right there staring at these trees. No way I missed giant orange marks. No way. Then my wife said, Jason, those absolutely weren't there. No hesitation, no maybe, no I think. She knew instantly. And somehow, that made it 10 times worse. Because now it wasn't in my head. Emily saw it too. I walked toward the tree, touched the bark, touched the paint, and immediately pulled my hand back. Fresh. Still wet. No, because now my brain stopped asking questions. Now panic started. Because fresh paint meant recent, very recent. Which meant somebody walked into my backyard recently, near my house, near my family. And we had absolutely no idea. I turned around immediately, straight toward the HOA guy. Still there, still smiling, still holding that stupid HOA board clipboard. And for a second, I almost walked over. Seriously, I almost did. Because I wanted to ask, what the hell is this? Simple, easy. Except something stopped me. Because deep down, I already knew I wasn't going to like the answer. Then, something moved. Across the street. I looked up. Old Mr. Parker. Watering his lawn. Normal. Completely normal. Except, he wasn't looking at his lawn. He was looking at me. Actually, no. Not me. The trees. And the second I looked at him, he looked away. Immediately. Walked back inside. What? No. Absolutely not. Because suddenly my skin started crawling. Because now my brain started doing that horrible thing again. Connecting things. Because Mr. Parker waves at everybody. Everybody! This guy once waved at an Amazon truck, and now suddenly, nothing? Then another movement. Curtains. Across the street. Tiny movement. Then another. Somebody watching. Then another. No, because now I started noticing things I absolutely wish I hadn't. People outside. Walking dogs. Checking mail. Looking. Not staring long enough to be obvious, just long enough. That weird neighborhood thing where people pretend not to look while absolutely looking. And suddenly I had this horrible feeling. That feeling where everybody somehow seems aware of something, except you. Then Emily quietly said, Jason. Not scared. Confused. Worse. I turned, and my stomach dropped instantly. Because she wasn't looking at our tree anymore. She was looking farther down the fence. Toward the others. No,
absolutely not. One orange mark. Then another. Then another. Then another. Not one tree. Not two. Every single tree. Silence. Complete silence.
Because I thought somebody marked one tree, one misunderstanding, one mistake. Instead, I was standing there realizing somebody walked through my property, looked at every tree I loved, and made decisions about all of them. Without asking, without knocking, without a single word. And suddenly, I wasn't wondering who the HOA guy was anymore. I wasn't wondering why he kept coming back. I wasn't wondering what was happening. Because now I had one much worse question. Why did it suddenly feel like the entire neighborhood already knew? Nobody spoke. Seriously, nobody. Because what exactly do you say after realizing somebody marked every tree in your backyard? You don't. You just stare. Tree, orange mark, tree, orange mark, tree, orange mark. And after a while, I swear something weird started happening. I stopped seeing trees. Now I saw targets. And I hated myself for thinking that. Because these weren't random trees. These were our trees. The ones that shaded the yard, the ones Emily decorated every Christmas, the ones we hung lights on, the ones that made the backyard feel like ours. And suddenly, I realized something. I wasn't scared somebody marked trees. I was scared somebody made decisions. Huge difference. Then Emily quietly said, "Jason, please tell me you know what this means." And honestly, I lied instantly. No idea. Absolute lie. Because deep down, I already had a horrible feeling. Not because I know anything about trees, I don't. Not because I know landscaping, I don't. Because those marks looked official. Too clean. Too organized. Too intentional. Not random. Not kids. Not a prank. Process. This looked like process. And if you've ever had one of those moments where your stomach drops before your brain catches up, you probably already know where my brain was going. Straight into panic mode. Because 2 minutes later, I was standing there with my phone in my hand doing what every terrified person does. Panic searching. Not normal searching. Panic searching. Because nobody calmly types, "What the hell do orange marks on trees mean?" Results exploded instantly. Tree removal, utility markings, arborists, survey markers, inspection tags. No. Because somehow every result felt worse than the last one. Then I saw two words. Two words that immediately made my stomach drop. Removal candidates. Absolutely not. Candidates? Candidates for what? And before I even clicked, before I even opened anything, my stomach already knew. Because suddenly I heard bicycle tires. Kids across the street. Normal. Completely normal. Except when they reached our house, they slowed down. All of them. And one kid looked directly at the backyard, looked at the orange marks, then looked at me and said, "My dad says they're cutting those down." No. Because immediately every single thought in my head stopped. Completely. Because kids don't invent HOA politics. Kids repeat things. That's all kids do. They repeat things they hear adults saying. And suddenly, I wasn't wondering whether people knew anymore.
Now I was wondering who the hell told them. Because if random neighborhood kids knew something, what exactly was happening here? I looked at Emily. Emily looked at me. Neither of us said anything because at that point, we were both thinking the same thing. We were late. Very late. Then, I looked back down at my phone. Started clicking. Started reading. Fast. Way too fast. And somehow, I stopped reading random websites. Stopped reading landscaping pages. Stopped reading forums. Because suddenly I found myself staring at Texas HOA procedures, actual documentation, actual laws. And eventually, I landed on Texas Property Code, Chapter 209.
And I remember just staring at the screen. Because now this wasn't feeling random anymore. Random is fixable. Official is terrifying. Because random people make mistakes. Processes don't. Processes keep moving. And suddenly I remember the clipboard. HOA board. No, stop. Because I physically shook my head. I actually shook my head. Because I wasn't replaying conversations again. I wasn't doing that. Not again. And then Emily suddenly said, "Jason." Quietly. Way too quietly. And I turned around. Toward the back gate. No, absolutely not. Because folded into the metal near the latch, half hidden, was a piece of paper. And before I even touched it, before I walked over, before I moved, I could already read one word. HOA. I didn't move. I just stared at it. Because sometimes your brain does this weird thing where it convinces you that if you don't touch something, it somehow becomes less real. And that HOA paper suddenly felt very real. Way too real. Emily looked at me. I looked at Emily. And then back at the gate. Nobody moved. Because deep down, I think both of us already knew something. Opening it wasn't going to create a problem. The problem already existed. This was just confirmation. And honestly, that terrified me. Because if you've ever had one of those moments where you already know the answer before opening the email, before answering the phone, before reading the message, you already know this feeling. That horrible moment where your stomach somehow arrives before your brain does. Then my wife quietly said, "Jason, open it." I immediately got angry. Not scared, angry. Because who puts things on somebody's gate? Who walks into somebody's backyard? Who marks trees? Who keeps showing up? And suddenly I realized something. Nobody asked us anything. Not one thing. No meeting, no warning, no conversation, nothing. Just people making decisions. And I hated that. Absolutely hated it. I started walking toward the gate. Slow. Way too slow. Because every step suddenly felt loud, stupidly loud. Then something weird hit me. Really weird. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. No lawnmowers, no barking dogs, no people talking, nothing. And I looked up. People were outside. But doing that weird suburban thing, checking mail too long, walking slower than normal, watering grass that absolutely didn't need water. And the second I looked at them, they looked away. Immediately. Because now I had that horrible feeling again. That feeling where somehow everybody already knows something except you.
If you've ever dealt with HOA paperwork before, you probably already know why my stomach started dropping right there. Because paperwork means process, and process means movement. Random people stop? Paperwork doesn't. Paperwork keeps moving. I reached the gate, grabbed the paper, pulled it off. Folded. Official logo. Actual HOA logo. And immediately one word jumped out. Notice. Because my brain immediately started doing the normal HOA thing. Grass violations. Mailbox color. Trash cans. Parking rules. Please let this be something stupid. Please.
I opened it, started reading. First line, property inspection. Second line, landscape evaluation. Third line, tree management review. And suddenly my eyes started moving faster, way too fast, skipping lines, jumping words, because I wasn't reading anymore. I was panic reading. Panic reading is dangerous because panic reading doesn't read sentences. It grabs random words. Approved, review, contractor, scheduled. I physically stopped breathing. Scheduled? Schedule what? I went back, started reading slower, actually slower, because now I wasn't scared of the HOA anymore. Now I was scared of one word, scheduled. Then I noticed tiny print underneath, small enough to ignore. And honestly, I wish I ignored it. Because there was a date. Not tomorrow, not next week, not pending approval. Whatever this thing was, it already had a date attached. And suddenly I remembered everything from earlier. Texas Property Code, Chapter 209. Procedures. Documentation. Not people. Systems. Systems don't panic. Systems don't stop. Systems keep moving whether you're ready or not. And my stomach dropped instantly. Because now I wasn't wondering if something was happening. I wasn't wondering if plans existed. I wasn't wondering if people knew. Suddenly I had one much worse thought. What if this thing wasn't being discussed anymore? What if it was already approved? Then Emily looked over my shoulder. She didn't say anything immediately, then quietly said, "Jason?" Not scared, not confused, worse. She pointed lower, toward one line I completely missed, because underneath contractor information, underneath review notes, underneath HOA references, was one sentence. Resident attendance not required. I swear my brain completely stopped. I read it again, then one more time. Because there was only one thing running through my head. Why would attendance not be required for something happening in my own backyard? I read it again. Resident attendance not required. Again. Resident attendance not required. Again. And after the third time, I swear something in my brain just stopped. Because maybe I'm stupid. Seriously, maybe. But if something is happening in my backyard, with my trees, on my property, why exactly would I not be required? Required for what? Required to attend what? Because attendance means meetings, hearings, decisions. People attend things. So what exactly was happening without me? And my wife quietly said, "Jason, keep reading." No,
Absolutely not. Because suddenly I realized something. I had stopped reading completely because my brain got trapped on one sentence. One stupid sentence. And if you've ever had one of those moments where one tiny detail suddenly becomes the only thing your brain can see, you already know what happened next. I looked lower. Contractor notes, property references, HOA language, codes, random numbers. And then I saw something. Small, tiny, easy to miss. And honestly, I wish I missed it. Because under everything, almost hidden, was access authorization confirmed? No, absolutely not. Because I physically turned around straight toward the backyard. Access? Access how?
And suddenly, one thought hit me. Fast, way too fast. The side gate. No, because our side gate had a lock, always. Emily made me install it years ago because she kept saying, "Jason, people are weird." And I remember laughing, actually laughing, because suburban neighborhoods feel safe until they don't. And suddenly I started walking fast, not toward the trees, toward the side fence. Emily immediately followed. Then both of us started moving faster, because now there was only one thing inside my head. Access authorization, access authorization, access authorization. I reached the gate, grabbed the handle, stopped immediately, because something felt wrong, really wrong. Not broken, not damaged, wrong. You know, when something belongs to you for years, you know exactly how it sounds, exactly how it feels, and instantly I knew. Something changed.
And then I looked down. My stomach dropped. Because near the latch, wedged into the wood, was a tiny numbered contractor tag. White plastic, small, almost invisible. Little black numbers like inventory, like somebody cataloged something. No, absolutely not. Because now I wasn't wondering whether somebody entered anymore. Now I was wondering who put numbers on my gate. Then Emily looked lower, toward the dirt. Quietly. Way too quietly. Jason. And for a second, I genuinely didn't understand what I was looking at. Then I saw it. Fresh footprints. Near the fence. Near the gate. Not leaving. Not walking away. Leading in. Straight into the backyard.
I didn't say anything. I just stared. Footprints. Straight into the backyard. Not away. Not toward the street. Not leaving. Entering. And I swear for a second my brain genuinely refused to process it. Because people leave footprints all the time, right? Delivery drivers, neighbors, kids. Completely normal. Except these weren't normal. Because these weren't near the sidewalk. Not near the front, not near the driveway. These started at the side gate. Our gate. Then disappeared deeper into the backyard. And suddenly, there was only one thing inside my head. Follow them. Terrible idea. Absolutely terrible idea. But if you've ever had one of those moments where your brain stops asking whether something is smart and only cares whether you need answers, you already know exactly what happened next. I started walking. Slow. My wife immediately grabbed my arm. Jason. No. Because now I needed to know. Needed. Not wanted. Needed. And every few steps, the footprints became harder to see. Then clearer. Then gone. Then there again. And honestly, that somehow felt worse.
Because now I wasn't following a person. I was following proof. Actual proof. Then something hit me. Really weird. The backyard felt different. Not physically. Wrong. Like when somebody sits in your chair, moves something in your kitchen, changes something tiny, and you can't explain why, but your brain immediately knows. Something changed. Then I saw it. No. Absolutely not. Because near the tree line, half hidden in the grass, was a tiny fluorescent contractor flag. Bright yellow, stuck in the ground. No, because I walked closer, then saw another one, then another, then another. Not random. A line. Actual line, straight across the backyard, straight through the trees, straight through the area where Emily wanted to build a swing set one day. Straight through everything. And suddenly my stomach dropped. Because nobody puts marker flags down for fun. Nobody. And if you've ever had contractors near your house, you already know exactly what those little flags usually mean. Measurements. Planning. Work. Work already happening.
And if suburban disasters somehow keep finding you too, stick around. Because at this point, I genuinely thought things couldn't get worse. I was wrong. Then my wife quietly said, "Jason, not scared, not confused, worse." Because she wasn't looking at the flags. She was looking higher, way higher, toward one of the trees. And for a second, I genuinely didn't understand what I was seeing. Then I realized.
Stapled into the bark was a laminated paper tag. White, official, tiny HOA logo, black printed numbers, one single line. I walked closer, read it, then felt my stomach completely disappear. Because written underneath the property number was removal crew. Approved.